Have you ever wondered when you go into a library and you pick a book or a comic, depending on what kind of adventure you want to go on, and talk about some amazing characters and their abilities and their skills? We're going to have a look at some amazing people today for each chapter. I'm talking about with their special abilities and how they cope, special needs tutors, and how they help special needs children or students in the world we live in today and show their amazing talents off. It could be to do with drawing, art, design, filming, cameras in this world. But where did it all start? I'll tell you where. In an amazing school, the Copies Academy, where they learn all types of lessons to help their abilities to get ready for the amazing world ahead of them. All the special things they'll need. But what am I looking in particular in this amazing adventure? I'm looking for how effective is using assistant technology in special needs education. Why I ask this question is because kids use technology on a daily basis. Computer work, making videos, making YouTube, using technology in lessons to help them a better understanding of reading and writing. People that can't talk use symbols and different types of technology or science, or use the touchboard to help them solve a problem. And we're going to talk today to three amazing special tutors who I've known since when I was at the Copies and they taught me. And how do I know this? Because I used to be a special needs student at the Copies Academy. Now I'm a film student at Staffs University. I also do special effects, narrating, editing for all sorts of people. I've also worked on music videos, films. I also have my own company that I'm making, Geek Studios, and I work with a lot of musicians to make music videos. Now I've come back to the school once more and talk about what are these abilities or techniques they use to assist special needs children. So I'm given so many questions to give us the answers. Talk about their positives, their goals, what were the negatives, what did they overcome, why they were at the Copies school. And talk about, is it possible to get new technology? And do they have the budget to get this technology? And do they have the time with someone to sit down and to help them to use this technology? We'll all find out now. So let's sit back with lights, camera, and obviously action, and watch this amazing journey of special needs education.
What I enjoy about teaching is the interaction with the students. If you like, the day-to-day challenge of preparing things, getting things right, just the excitement and also the difference each day brings. No one day in teaching is the same. It's unique, and that's what you find. I've done other jobs before, and you find that in other jobs, when you've been in it for a few years, it becomes very repetitive. Teaching doesn't come repetitive because every day you get new challenges and also new experiences, so it's a really rewarding career.
In my job, I enjoy the variety more than anything, because every day at this school is a completely different day. And even though I have a timetable, it's rare that I can get through an entire day where I haven't had to do something different, for example this. So every day is very different. Kids are a bit unpredictable, and I like that.
So the thing I enjoy most about teaching is that no 2 days are ever the same. I get to teach things that I enjoy learning about. I enjoy history, geography, science, things like that. So getting to teach that and inspire a young mind is why I get into teaching.
I did 13 years in mainstream, and I taught in this country and I taught in Japan, and I taught full-time, I taught part-time, and I taught in a variety of different schools, some challenging schools, some very good schools, some schools with behaviours, some schools where all the children were absolutely perfect. So I felt like I had done everything that I could do in mainstream, and I was looking for a new challenge. So I only came to have a look around and the head teacher at the time gave me a job on the spot. So not an awful lot of thought went into it. She just told me that I would be teaching at her school.
And I have always worked outside of mainstream. The only time I've worked within mainstream is to do my training, because you don't get the opportunity to do your NQT years in special needs schools. So I had to go into mainstream to become a teacher, but for when I was a TA and when I've started my teaching career, I've always worked in special needs. I find it a lot more rewarding. I find some mainstreams to be quite prescriptive, whereas within special needs schools and alternative provisions, you can get a better sense of what's best for the child rather than what's best for the school.
It was a fluke. I was doing a lot of supply work at the time, and the chap at the supply agency said, "Oh, Mr. Chesters, would you be interested in going to a special needs school? They're a bit short." So I popped along, wasn't sure what to expect, but when I got there, just thoroughly enjoyed it. I was asked to come back, which was always a good thing on supply. I went back on supply for a further 3 weeks. That 3 weeks proved very successful. Again, thoroughly enjoyed it. I was then asked to extend my supply work at that school, eventually leading to a position at the school. It's been that successful that I've now been at that school now for 18 years. So, not bad.
So we try and bring a sense of fun and a sense of understanding, a sense of community, a sense of family values, which inspire younger people who may have been told they can't achieve or won't achieve. We get them to achieve by creating a very decent environment for them.
From my own perspective, I've come from quite a varied background, from engineering, from geology, from working with personnel, and I think you bring a lot of your experiences into teaching, or you have the potential to bring experiences in. So I think those experiences have helped me in teaching, which in turn I've been able to impart to the students that I've dealt with. I also, as a lot of the students are aware of, I have quite a wicked sense of humour. And again, I think humour in education can be a good thing. It's a bit of a double-edged thing as well, though, because sometimes if you're not careful, humour can backfire, both for you and for the students. So you have to be careful. But having a sense of humour does help in education, because you have those days when things don't work, things don't go to plan, and you just need to be able to, if you like, smile, pick yourself up, take yourself off home, recharge the batteries, and then come at it again, but usually coming at it from a different perspective. So what do I feel again that I contribute? Enthusiasm. And like I say, I've been doing special educational needs now for 18 years, and I still feel as enthusiastic. Not as probably energetic as I was, but still enthusiastic.
Sometimes the challenge is the reward, because if they are finding it hard and you put things into place that makes their everyday life easier, then that is the reward in itself. So sometimes it's not seeing them achieve a fantastic GCSE, sometimes it's seeing them just come into the classroom, sit down and look comfortable.
Biggest challenge is how to cope with those needs and how to deal with them and find the strategies and the best methods that will enable those students to develop in what they need. So if you can find that, that's the biggest challenge, but by finding that you also have the biggest reward, because seeing a student achieve is the biggest reward. It doesn't matter how small that achievement is, it's just massive. Seeing a child that hasn't smiled for whenever, when you see them smile for that first time, or speak the first words, or to accept something that they've not accepted for the first time, that is just a massive reward, and you just smile.
Patience. Not all students get everything in the same way. Sometimes it is going over, repeating things, which can be frustrating, but it is a challenge. The biggest reward is when a student gets something that you've been working on for a very long time and it becomes part of who they are.
I think I've almost just answered that. You know you've achieved when students turn around either with a smile, or they come to you at the end of a lesson or the end of an activity and go, oh, I really enjoyed that, I really got something out of it. If you're getting that, you've achieved. Yes, we have accreditation within special educational needs, but that accreditation should be done again with the students in mind, not just done for accreditation purposes. It should be done to further the students and develop what they require.
And you'll see it in the students. You'll see them puff their chest out a bit more. You'll see them hold their head higher. You will see them just be more confident around the school. And it's more than education. It's self-worth and things like that.
Again, every child is different. So, for some children in our school, the achievement is very tiny, small steps, like saying hello or making eye contact. And for other children, it's when they walk out of their final day of their work experience with their head held high, smiling and promising to go back.
I take a lot of inspiration from other teachers. You can find a lot of good ideas on social media sites like Twitter, things like that, but generally we get most of the ideas from the teachers within the schools and other people's experiences.
Well, I suppose teaching, like a lot of jobs, is on-the-job training. You do your degree or whatever, your postgraduate within your subject areas, and then you go into schools either on a temporary contract or full contract. Within school, you're given opportunity to develop your professional development. Now that might be through courses, it might be online courses, it might be meeting with other staff from other schools within your own educational establishment. And those are methods to move on. But the biggest method to move on is, in my opinion, is engaging with the students you deal with. There's nothing better than finding routes through different topics, different subjects. But again, trying to find the needs of those children is important. Once you've identify the needs, you can then start to put the support in place and the strategies and everything else you need to support that child.
That's an impossible question, because when you've been doing it for 22 years, it's like driving a car. Sometimes you just do it and you don't really know what you're doing. But I always try to make sure that I'm listening to the students, and if the lesson starts going in one direction because the students are taking it that way, then I let it go in that direction and just have to put a big line through my planning for the week.
I like to use interactive things, kinetic kind of ways of teaching, sort of like communication cards, board work, where you get to move things about. It just makes it a lot more interactive and a lot more fun.
Tools are like anything. In any school, you've got your basic tools, your pens, pencils, and the stationery. You then move up into the more technological areas, into your interactive whiteboards, iPads, computers, laptops, desktops. And we use all of those within special educational needs. Would I like to see more? Yes, but we also have to deal with costs and technological constraint. Strategies we use are endless. Coping strategies, dealing with incidents, behavioural strategies. All of those come to play within a group situation with an individual. we don't deal with individuals in the same way. All individuals within special educational needs are treated as individuals, and therefore all their requirements and needs are also individual. So we talk about individual education plans. So what we do, we identify the needs of that child, and then we target what their requirements are and try and put the strategies in to cope with that and deal with that, but also try and put the resources that are required for that as well.
A lot of blank faces in the classroom, so you kind of recognise if something is not going well, but the great thing about it is that you have the ability to turn things around quite easily and come completely off that and go back and address anything which is becoming confusing.
Again, that seems to be an easy one at times, and the difficulty with that is you can be in a lesson and you can come out of a lesson and think, oh, that's worked really well. But actually, when you talk to other staff that have been in a lesson, you pick up things, oh, maybe I should have done that, maybe I shouldn't have done that, maybe you needed this resource, maybe you needed a different way of approaching things. So recognising what's working well sometimes can be an easy thing or a difficult thing to recognise, because you need people around you to be able to reflect on your practice. So we have lesson observations, we have work scrutinies that again focus on what you're doing within a lesson. Are you doing the things right? Are you actually stretching the needs of the students? Are you meeting the needs of the students? So I think you can have your own idea, but sometimes you need feedback from other staff.
Sometimes you just have to look at the kids' faces and you know it's not working. And again, you have to be just put it down to experience and change, and you should have plan A, B and C for every lesson. And if there's a child who's throwing their books at you, that's an indication that it's not working very well.
Within our school, we do that in numerous ways. We have students from year 7 to year 11. So as soon as the students arrive at year 7, what we're trying to do is build their self-esteem, self-confidence. That starts straight away. We put activities on, we put trips on that will help develop that confidence and that self-esteem. We build on that in later years by putting in work experience. We have careers meetings. We talk about careers within lessons. We have subjects such as PSHE, which is the personal social health education side of things, again dealing with the emotional side of things primarily, but also then focusing on where our students want to go. What careers are they interested in? What activities are they interested in? From that, we try and build paths in place so they can then have an idea of where they want to go. We also have links with the various colleges local to us, and we're forging greater links with those, again to try and build pathways for the students that we have.
That is my job, that's the biggest part of my job. I am the careers officer here, and I do all the work experience and I do all the transition from Key Stage 4 into colleges. So we have a programme that starts in year 9, when we start by just showing the children what's out there post 16, and we then do lots of transition visits, we do lots of taster days. We make sure when they go on their work experience that they have met the work experience, the job coach beforehand, and I also am in charge of independent living and work skills for the whole school. And that is, as it says, getting children ready for independence. That might be being able to get dressed and wash their hands by themselves, or it might be being able to fill in a job application and travel on public transport to a place of work. Every child is different, and every child's independence level is going to be different, and our job in this school is to make sure that when they leave us, they are ready for the next step. It's the best part of my job, really, and it's when the children leave and don't want to come back because they are ready that you know you've done well.
We provide students with work experience, and there's lots of different lessons like independent life and work skills, which help students understand perhaps how to use money, how to speak to people, which is really good. It really does prepare them. We've had a lot of students go and do work experience before who have come back, and we've had great feedback from the people who have helped us.
Everybody leaves school with happy memories and the ambition to move on to wherever they're going to next.
My goals as a tutor is to make the students a little more self-aware and better than when I found them in the first place. So they're at a stage where they can be a little bit more maturer, and it is just helps them navigate the rest of their school career a little easier.
Survival. Goals as a tutor is really, you've got a group of students that you're going to see every day. You're going to see them at the beginning of the day, you're going to see them at lunchtime, you're going to see them at the end of the day. So my role, and my biggest role, is to make sure that they're happy, they come in happy, and they leave us happy. If there are any issues coming in, we try and deal with those. If there are any issues that arise within school, obviously again, we try and deal with those in the most appropriate way. So it's really, I think, making sure I have a happy tutor group. Also, giving them the opportunity to voice their opinions, to say if they're unhappy, to say if things are bothering them, whether it be a member of staff, whether it be other students, doesn't matter. If you like, we're facilitators, and what we're trying to facilitate is their ability to express their needs, their wants, in any way that they need.
Yes, every day. I find because students are so savvy with technology that having paper-based activities, these things like that, can be a little old school. So I tend to use a lot of technology like iPads, voting systems, apps like Chirp, which are really good.
A little bit. I'd like to use it more, but I think again, what we're tied to a budget. We do use interactive whiteboards. We have laptops, we have desktops, so computers are a big thing. Cameras that are used both by staff and students, we use a lot, both for evidence but also for newsletters and various other things. So we do use technology. Could we use more technology? Yes, and I'm sure any school would say the same thing. It's really finding what technology is out there, but also what we could use for the best. There's no point in buying technology that no one's going to use. It's going to sit on a shelf. So what we need to do as a school is to find technology that is actually going to be meaningful, is going to do some constructive work for the students, and something we can move on with.
I am a dinosaur and it's very hard for me to embrace new technology. I try very hard, but at the moment it's probably just my interactive whiteboard, which I only really use as a projector. I'd love to have a visualizer, I'd love to have the iPads out every lesson, I'd love lots of technology going on, but it fills me with dread. So that is an area which I need to improve.
It has a massive impact. I mean, for instance, just under 2 weeks ago, my interactive whiteboard went down, which meant the whiteboard was out of action. Did it have an impact? Yes, massively, because you rely on it for so many different things, for putting up information for the students, for helping support your lessons, to make your lessons interactive, for students to be able to come and interact with the board and so on and so on. We went back to using a flip chart, which worked, but it didn't give the same opportunities for the students. So does it have an impact? Of course it does. So again, making sure we've got the technology in place, but also making sure we've got the technology running that we have got in place.
And students are very technological savvy, so they will pick up things quite easily. They'll understand things perhaps better than I do sometimes, but it does create a positive learning environment.
I'd like visualisers in every room, which are not very expensive. I'd like a 3D printer in the tech room. I would like communication boards for all the children who are non-verbal. And I would like a full set of sensory equipment which would improve children's health and well-being. But I don't really know what any of that looks like.
I don't really know. I think we're pretty well resourced in that department. Not every school has an interactive whiteboard in every classroom. We have a really well functioning ICT room. We have iPads. I can't really think of anything. Perhaps something, a 4D room, but that would be like on an ideal list.
To be honest, I don't know. Again, it's having the time to sit down and talk to somebody about technology that is available out there, and to actually then go away and have the opportunity to look at that technology and assess its impact on the students and the school. I know one of the schools within our trust is using, I think it's called green screen technology, where you can have a green screen, you can project any background onto it, and that makes, for some students, a really fantastic learning environment. So if I was doing teaching about money, for instance, I can project about a shop environment where they can go and interact within a shop environment. Or if it's interaction at a football match and teaching about teamwork and how to interact with people, there's lots of ways you can do that with a green background. So that's one of the things that's possible. Obviously, I'm aware that the financial implications of that are quite big. So again, it's assessing really what's the best and what's the best value for money.
Fairly. I wouldn't say completely yes, and I wouldn't say completely no, but I have a good understanding on how to use iPads and use apps like Chirp, which students do enjoy.
No, I don't. Please help me get this to a better standard.
No. As I've just said, if it was, I could tell you about all the technology that I think we could use in school and its impact, but I don't have that knowledge. So I'm relying on going to see people that have got that knowledge that can then feed back. So my technology is up to date in terms of interactive whiteboards, using an iPad, using computers and digital cameras, but that's about it. In terms of expanding that knowledge, I'd love to, because obviously you look at the gaming industry as an example and using the interactive visors, 3D, and that is something I think we could look at. But again, how much does it cost?
Yeah, I would. I think every teacher should know technology. Students are becoming a lot more savvy. Technology is moving where it's part of personal life now, so it is a necessary thing to do in teaching.
I think I've just said that, which is about, finding out about new technologies that are out there. Can we bring them into school? Will they have an impact? Will it be a positive impact? And how much is it going to cost? Those are the big questions to ask around that.
At the moment next door I have 10 children doing a BTEC in art and design, and they're all using different equipment. And when I first got them in September, they were very much, what do I do now, what do I do next, how do I do it, very needy in a way. And as I've just walked out of the room and left them, they're all getting on, and every single piece of work is completely different. And that is because I've given them the skills, but also know when to step back and let them make mistakes. And I think sometimes in teaching we are afraid of the children making mistakes, and they are afraid of making mistakes. And I think that mistakes are a good thing.
A lesson I did a week ago, in fact. It was a maths lesson. It was a lesson on fractions. Did it work? Yes, it worked. Was I happy with it? To a point. On reflection, could I have done it better? Yes. And the reflection was from staff that actually came in and observed that lesson. And sometimes you can think about a lesson and think, yeah, that lesson went really well. So what you need is other staff to be able to come in, and this is where lesson observations are important, and for them to be able to say, well, actually, Mr. Chesters, it was a good lesson in these areas, however, you need to look at these areas. And that was the big thing I took from last week, from that maths lesson. Yes, there were certain areas of it that were good, and if someone had have asked me, I'd have said the whole lesson was good. But reflecting on it now, could I have done it better? Yes. Will I do it better? Yes. Have I got more resources to support that lesson now? Yes. And so on. So teaching is a reflective practice, but you can only reflect so much by yourself as an individual. You need other people around you to be able to feed back, to give you feedback, but that feedback needs to be constructive. If the feedback coming back to you is done in a negative way, then that can be soul destroying. It can destroy you. So the feedback I had was it done in a positive way. It made me reflect on the lesson, and has it improved my teaching? Well, I think it has, and that will be put into practice later on this term.
We did a lesson on Macbeth where I asked students to modernise the text of Macbeth into obviously modern day circumstances. It was very successful. We had a lot of students creating a lot of tension between Macbeth and Lady Macbeth about how and why they wanted to kill King Duncan, so that was a really good lesson.
We use a practice in school called SKIP, which is Strategies for Crisis Intervention and Prevention. Within that, we talk about positive behaviour a lot. It's a massive element of SKIP. And positive behaviour is making sure that, students are engaged in a lesson, they are sure about their boundaries, they know what is expected of them, they know that's in terms of what behaviour is expected of them, but also educationally what is expected of them, what we want them to achieve. But also what we do, we make sure that we're putting the resources in place to support those students, because without those resources we fail the student, and then we fail the student, and then we start questioning, well, why is the lesson gone wrong? Why is the student not behaving in the right way? Well, we've almost set the lesson up for that student to fail, so what do you expect is going to happen? So strategies to use are, everything we use in school is done in a positive way. It's very much focused on the individual student. So what we're trying to do is engage all students across all abilities to make sure that they achieve at the right level?
I like to use a lot of teacher-led activities, some student-led activities. I like to use communication cards where students have to remain quiet but still can answer the question using a certain card or certain. You can do lots of picture drawings, how they feel and how to express themselves.
My training is in art teaching, so I'm very hands-on. I do teach a lot of English though, and my English lessons tend to be quite practical and hands-on activities. So we do a lot of speaking and listening, we do a lot of interview skills, get them to use their imagination quite a lot of moving around the room. It's rare if you come into my lessons that all the children will be sitting and writing in isolation. It's a very interactive.
My experience is they work really well. We should really see students as individuals and not as groups of students, because every student is different, like every teacher is different. Sometimes it can be difficult to implement a individualised behaviour plan because it feels like you're giving a bit more to one student and not to the other. But it is about creating that level playing field but still working within that individual educational plan.
Within my tutor group, we have students that do have individual education plans, and basically, as I've spoken about already, it's making sure that we recognise the difficulties those students have, but not only recognise them, but do something about it in a positive way. So again, it's making sure we speak to the students involved, we put strategies in place that are going to enable those students to achieve, but also to be happy, and also to recognise that they can achieve. They're not failures, they're very successful. And it's working very well within the school.
Generally, discipline in my classroom is quite good really, and I think it's because the children actually tend to interact with me when they have problems, because I'm also a safeguarding lead, so I do have to deal with children when they're having issues or problems, and I often talk to adults on behalf of them. I'm also in charge of all the looked after children at our school, so I'm quite often in a lot of meetings and I'm their advocate. So generally, because children are very good at knowing who's a useful person, I'm quite useful to them, and I'm often their advocate and talking to them and then talking for them. So quite often I have a good relationship with the children, but that starts with listening to their needs, and if there is behaviour, you've got to look at why the behaviour is happening. It's never because a child is just naughty, because children are not just naughty. They are trying to tell you something with their behaviour.
Being fair, being approachable, talking to students, recognising again their requirements, their needs, recognising when they come in, as we talked about when we were talking about the tutor groups, recognising when they come in that they're not quite right, they're unhappy, something's bothering them. Being able to give them the chance that they can go and talk to somebody, and giving them that opportunity. So maintaining discipline is very simple if you put the basics in place to start with. Obviously there are incidents that do rise because of whatever, because someone's not decided to do something. But again, it's how you react to that. Now you can react to that in any number of ways, but what we try and do, we try and react to any situation in a positive way. So what I mean by that is we don't just say, oh well, forget about it, it can go away. But what we try and do is put, if you like, a solution in place that is agreeable to all parties. So if a student's doing something that's wrong, rather than addressing just necessarily what's wrong, it's what we can do to put it right. So what are the positive things we put in place to address it?
It's a variety, it's a bag of tricks. Not every student is the same. What works with one student doesn't necessarily work with another. For year 7s, we want to promote a good positive attitude, so saying you're disappointed, things like that works nicely with those. Year 8 and 9s, you can do a bit of shouting, but I wouldn't ever recommend shouting because you'll probably end up getting shouted back at. Year 10s, humour is the best discipline, because you can use it in a way which diffuses a situation, but you can still make your point quite easily.
A challenge at work. I mean, you come across challenges every day. So that one's quite a difficult one to probably answer, but it's the biggest thing with any challenge in any school is how you deal with it. Now, you can either internalise it and take it all on board, which is what I used to do in the past, which doesn't do you any good, or you can talk to people. And for me, the best people for me to talk to are the senior leadership team, because if something's bothering me and I can't deal with it, then I need to take it higher. There's no point in taking it lower to people below me, because they're not going to be able to do anything about it. Equally, there's no point in, if you like, just bad-mouthing or gossiping about a situation. If there's a situation, it needs to be dealt with. So taking it higher can usually resolve that, because you end up being able to talk about it, and sometimes it's just being able to talk about it and rationalise the situation that enables you to solve it. And actually, you solve it yourself. Sometimes you can't solve it yourself, so it does need to be taken higher. For an instance, one of the issues we had in school was the D&T room wasn't really fit for purpose at one point. We've now had a new build, the new room is all set up, and it's fantastic. I couldn't have solved that myself, but going higher has enabled that to happen.
Some challenges that I have at work is when children are coming from the playground where there's been an incident and they're not ready for work, and so one of the ways to overcome that is to give them space, not to try and get them to resolve issues if they're not ready for it. Give them the tools to resolve that. So that might be talking to them, it might be just sitting and having a cup of tea with them, it might be getting them to write it down, it might be doing some resolution where you get both parties together and try and sort it out. There's no point trying to teach a new skill or a new piece of knowledge to a child who is still really, really angry about something that's happened 20 minutes ago. And you've just got to recognise that. Education is sometimes not about subject knowledge.
I've worked at lots of PRUs, so we've had a lot of challenging behaviours, chairs thrown, cups of tea thrown over people, physical violence towards other students, things like that. Thankfully never towards me, but a lot of the time just a conversation, a cup of tea and some biscuits does the job lovely. You can have that conversation, calm them down, diffuse it and pick apart what happened, why they did it, how they're feeling, how that interrupted onto how that affected other people.
This is a big thing for me because I'm often asking parents and students to make decisions about the next stage in their education, and so it's all about giving them that information, inviting them in. I also run the Copies Facebook page, so I'm quite often putting lots and lots of information on there, because I know as a parent that the most frustrating thing is if you don't know what's going on in school. And any teenager will come home and just grunt at the parents and go into the bedroom, and a lot of our children are perhaps non-verbal or find it difficult to verbalise what they are feeling. And so if a parent can look at the Copies Facebook page or look at the social media and have a topic that they can talk about, that can sometimes start conversations at school. And it's often just making a phone call to say how well a child has done in school is a starting point for conversations.
So I do have a few looked after children in my form. We have to maintain quite good contact with carers and parents just to see how behaviour is being managed at home, because what necessarily you see at school is not what's going on at home. Other examples are when students are doing something really well, make that positive phone call home, because parents don't hear it enough that their students, their children are doing really well. So I'd always recommend doing a positive call home, because it builds that relationship up between carers, parents and yourself.
All our students have diaries, planners to go home. So they bring them in and they take them home most of the time. We communicate through the planners, so we'll write any messages in the planners. Parents will also advise us of anything in the planners. So we have a two-way communication. We also have an open door policy in school, which means that if parents or carers need anything and need to communicate anything, they can come to the school and, when possible, meet the member of staff or whoever needs to deal with it and sort it out. Support staff in school, our support staff are TAs, or they might be other teachers, and that is very much addressed on a verbal way, but also through the way we plan. Planning obviously is key to teaching. If we can include the relevant people within the planning, then it makes life a lot easier for ourselves, but also the support staff that we have in place. So what I mean by that is, if the support staff know what's expected of them, know what they've got to do, know what the expectations are, then it makes life a lot easier for everybody associated with, particularly with that lesson.
Back in when I used to work in a PRU, I worked with a student with dissociative identity disorder who was a prolific self-harmer, and it was probably the best and worst experience working with that student. Obviously the worst bits were all the emotions you have to deal with from that student's history, from that student wanting to hurt themselves and you having to let them in a way. That was pretty difficult, but the rewards as well, when that student finally became part of the school and trusted us and used to say that school was her home, was one of the most rewarding things I've done as a teacher.
Again, I've had a lot of students over a great many years, and it's not been the student that's been difficult to deal with, it's myself. Now what I mean by that is, as you progress through education, you learn more, you never stop learning, and the biggest thing is how to deal with students, how to deal with those young people in the most appropriate way. But through courses, going on, meeting other staff, talking to staff, how they deal with other students, how they've dealt with certain behaviours, has enabled me to take that on board and use that in my own teaching. And hopefully now I can impart my understanding and my knowledge to staff that I deal with. So that's really good.
I don't think there's one particular student, but quite a lot of students come to us possibly from having a bad experience at mainstream and won't even come into the classroom. And we did have a child who joined us in year 10, I think it was in year 10, from a different school, and his attendance was 38% at that school, and his paperwork just looks like a bit of a nightmare. When he left here, because we just nurtured him and listened to him and gave him the time to get to know us, his attendance was 95%, and he was the first student who came back to visit us, which was really lovely to see.
A cup of tea and biscuits. Talking, realising that you're a human as well, and for them to realise you're a human is perhaps one of the easiest ways to hook into a student, because sometimes they can see you as very similar to the police, like you're a part of the system. So if you break that down a little bit and realise that you're a human being as well, It does a lot for your both your behaviour management and your general respect around the school. So.
And that the next question is, how did you work with them to succeed? And I think that is it, listening with them, finding out what they were good at, finding out about what they didn't like so much, giving them extra support where they needed it.
Okay. One of the more difficult students that I've dealt with just recently, there was a young man who found it really difficult with his peers, but also he couldn't accept when he was wrong. And when he was wrong, staff stepped in, and it just went up like a bottle of pop, basically. He just blew up. Things were getting ripped off walls, things were getting thrown, tables were turned over, chairs thrown. And really, it was difficult to start with. What we needed to do in that situation was we used a thing called distraction. So basically what we're doing, we're taking the focus from the event that's occurred to something else. So with this young man, what we did, we went and played football and kicked the ball around outside where possible, or in the sports hall. What that did was distracted him, took his mind away from what was happening, and also enabled you to be able to start to talk to him. Once we did that, he calmed a lot better. So distraction techniques are quite important in a teacher's armoury. What we then did was sat with him and we gave him responsibility. So he had to be responsible for other students, for some of the younger students. Because of that, he accepted that and dealt with it, and touch wood, we've had no incident with that young man for a very long time. Now, I'm tempting fate now when I say that, but from a very long time, this young man has been great. Not saying he's perfect, but he's learnt to control his anger. He's learnt to express his feelings. He'll come and talk to people when he's cross, rather than just venting. So, a real success story for this young man, but also for the staff around him. So really pleased. And that is the end of our questions.
The Coppice School is one of the amazing places we have now discovered. They are amazing people who put their time and effort to support the students and give them the ability, the creativity and the methods they need to use, and give them that they can do it, they can succeed, they can use their talent for the world to see and to show other people what they can do with their abilities, and to go forth and use their talent for amazing things. But there's also flaws at the school. They're lacking in resource, in technology, the time, the training, the budgets they need to improve. But I think in time they will, and they'll achieve even more amazing things as time goes on. But that's what it is. It's time. But as we see, the tutors are amazing. They give kids hope. They give them the confidence. They give them the abilities to go out with a smile on their face and to see them achieve amazing things. That is the biggest goal and the success when they teach the kids at the school. And that's what they do. They help them to put a smile on their face and be proud of what you are. That is the biggest achievement that any tutor can do.